at Metropol TVKE across all your social media platforms. 20146 your SMS line. Let's talk about it then. We're calling it the post-budget analysis. We did know of it, so let's really see where the figures are and where the expenditure is. Now, today, we reflect on the Jubilee government on the Big Four action plan. Number one, enhancing manufacturing. Number two, food security and nutrition. And number three, universal healthcare coverage. And number four, affordable housing. What have they achieved so far? How long do they need to achieve the leftover bits of the action plan? Good. So let's go back therefore and table this conversation for the 2021-2022 budget document. And joining us this morning in the studio, we are joined by Abraham Muthogo, the CEO of Miradi Capital. Abraham, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good.
Good. All right. Online, we are joined by Churchill Ogutu, who's the head of research at Genghis Capital. Churchill, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Happy to have you around. We are also joined by Adhiambo Ramogi, economic analyst and CEO, LM Capital. Ramogi, it's been a minute, sir. How are you doing?
I'm great, sir. How are you?
Fantastic. Can't complain. Let's therefore talk about this morning, and we do expect shortly to be joined by Samuel Karanja, who's the CEO, MSME Alliance of Kenya. All right. Abraham, let's begin from just where we are. We know the figure, the biggest one we've seen yet. A quick reaction to that figure.
For me, again, we're going to do another deficit budget on a big one, because we're talking about a 3.7 billion budget.
Yes.
Trillion budget, sorry.
Yes.
And we are projecting to collect a maximum of 2 trillion. So we are going in with a whole of 1.7 trillion.
Yes.
By design. And that's assuming that we collect the 2 trillion, which we never have in good times. And now we want to collect it in bad times.
Pretty much. All right. Let me cross over to Churchill. Churchill, the biggest one yet. And I remember I spoke to you last year. And then you told me, all right, Simba, let's get ready for a quick supplementary budget once they realize that whatever they have is not really going to tick. And guess what, Churchill? They did. Are they going to get ready for the same this time as well?
Morning, Elijah.
Good morning,
Absolutely.
sir.
And not only have we seen one supplementary budget in the current financial year, sometime this week we saw the tabling of the second supplementary budget. So it's absolutely ridiculous, our budget making process, if we have two supplementary budget in a single year. So even as you look at the next financial year, of course, there could be some moving parts playing up. We have elections coming up in the next financial year. Who knows about the uncertainty regarding the referendum? So those are some of the things that could lead to a supplementary adjustment in the course of the year. So that is something that I don't think it will be able to fully smoothen it out of our PFM framework. Although the Public Account Committee weighed on it, and he said that the latest that we can see a supplementary being tabled in Parliament should be 2 months before the end of the financial year. This is a recommendation that is still being debated as part of the auditing of 2017-2018 financials.
Yes.
I don't know whether the parliamentarians will also approve that, and so that we can see, rather than having a supplementary in the last month of the financial year, the last one, if at all, will go to the supplementary route. At least we need to get the last one by the end of April.
Pretty much. Churchill, I'll be coming back to you, because then the question is going to be, Churchill, I mean, under which numbers are we projecting this fiscal year's budget? Because what we do know, the quarter four numbers are not yet being tabled to us, Churchill. All right, let me cross over to Ramogi. I mean, look at that, 2 trillion that KRA has to collect. But if you look at that absolute figure, 3.66 trillion. I mean, let's look at that figure on the. What does it make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel hopeful. Look, we are able to build a budget of 3.66 trillion.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
I remember days when Musalia Mudavadi would come to Parliament, very proud, reading a budget of 100 billion. So look where we've come from. But of course, I am as concerned about the deficits, as my colleague has mentioned. he's hopeful of 2 trillion. I'm hopeful of at most 1.5 trillion. Because the economy is really affected by this COVID-19.
Yes.
I'm not sure they are going to get 2 trillion out of this very economy that they have really ravished with a further taxation, because the problem of taxation is it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, you are going to get the little money you want to get. On the other, you are affecting growth. And as much as you are affecting growth, that will also affect your overall collections. So 1.5 trillion would be more realistic. So we are looking at a case where we are dealing with a deficit of about 2.1 trillion.
Yeah.
And we are at the danger zone in terms of debt or borrowing. We have very little options in terms of selling our parastatals or assets, as it were. The countries that would give us grants are themselves struggling with how to manage the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes.
And so it's a very hopeful budget. On one hand, of course, it excites us that the economy is expanding. It gives the illusion that the economy is expanding. But on the other, the reality is very unsatisfactory.
Pretty much. All right, Abraham, let's table that conversation therefore, because let's look at the numbers therefore. I mean, when we look at that data, and I wanted to show exactly where we are in terms of our budget deficits that we've accrued all the way from 2015 up to where we are right now, 2019, 2020. And you will see that every time we get into a budgeting year, the general trend there is that our budget deficit has always been on incremental. And this is the same thing that we're seeing this year again, Abraham. Now, let's talk about it therefore. They are counting on KRA collecting this 2 trillion. I mean, Abraham, you and I have spoken for close to 2 years now.
Yeah.
They have never met their target. What are we riding on then? Why did we take it to 3.66 trillion, knowing very well that even this ordinary revenue that we want to get from the taxman, we were never going to get it?
You see, if you look at the reality
Yes.
that CSC Attorney was looking at,
Yes.
or facing, in my personal opinion, first of all, he has 2 elephants in that room. Number one, debt service,
Yes.
which is now approaching or has already crossed the 1 trillion mark. Public wage bill, which is also approaching the 1 trillion or is about to cross it. So you're already at 2 trillion before you begin. Then on top of that, there's Agenda 4 that has to also go on. So if you put those 3, that's you'll see clearly how you can easily move to 3 trillion.
Yes.
Just on those 3 items. So then on the other hand, KRA, you want KRA to fund that. It's also you're pushing them to 1.7, and then you're saying 300 million will come from ministerial collections. Now, this is not a normal year. Last year was not a normal year, this is not a normal year. So, as my colleague has said, collecting 2 trillion will be a tall order.
Yes.
Why? Because this is an economy that's supposed to be resuscitated, not sucked blood out of. I mean, today, even if you are running a blood bank and you wanted to replenish the bank, you not go to people who are in hospital for you to draw blood. The same thing, Kerry, right now, we should be seeing more of tax breaks than of tax the economy more.
Yes.
But actually, what we are doing is that if you go through the details, most of the breaks that they had given, they have taken them back.
Yes.
But you cannot blame them. If if they have been told to raise 1.7 trillion, where do they get it from? They have to get it from somewhere.
Yes.
So any available room they have, they're utilizing it. But again, you can only tax an economy to a certain extent, only to a certain level, because this economy has been either shrinking or has been static.
Yes.
So I totally agree with my brother that for sure we will not collect that amount. So we are looking at a deficit of minimum 2 trillion,
Yes.
which has to be borrowed.
Yes.
Then again, which brings the issue of we have already hit our debt ceiling in terms of the limit. So now, again, the Parliament has to increase it to another number. So these things, when you look at it, the ripple effect of it eventually is that you'll find that we'll reach a place where we will be doing deficit budgets by design.
Yes.
But the ultimate solution, again, we have to come to an agreement that we've reached a point where we can no longer sustain what we are doing. And I think this is the first year of that reality starting to sink. For now, let me leave it at that.
Pretty much. Churchill, let me cross over to you as well, because that concern that Abraham is having on paper, yes, Ukuru Yatani is saying, well, can you say we've reduced that budget deficit from where we were last year to how it's going to be this year. But then that deficit is not like it's predetermined. It's something that keeps on changing as the year goes by, depending on the revenue targets that you keep on meeting within those quarters in the year. Are we going to see a change as well? Because if we show you this data this morning, when we look at the actual versus the turnout, and I don't know, Yvonne, if you could actually show us that data all the way from, look at that, from 2016, 2017, all the way to 2019, 2020, we have more negatives than more positives, meaning that they've not had it their way when it comes to even looking at these budget deficits, the ones that they're actually projecting.
Yes, absolutely. Looking at even in any given financial year,
yes,
the deficit is usually a moving target. From the point whereby we started at the budget policy statement, there was a number that was there.
Yes.
And then the draft estimates that we have right now, and even what will eventually pan out. Even if you look at the current financial year, you see that it's been actually coming up, meaning that either these media revisions, and mostly is because of the underperformance in revenue, which now necessitates that the fiscal deficit will now balloon further. And if I speak to what even Abraham had touched on earlier, these things to do with revenue estimates. And looking at what is projected for the next financial year in terms of the ordinary revenue, we're looking at 1.78 trillion. That is an increase of 181 billion from the current financial year.
Yes.
But having said that, and looking at even what the CS presented yesterday, the finance bill, we have a finance bill, but it is expected to realize only 8.7 billion shillings. If you look at all those proposals in the finance bill, it's coming to a paltry 8.7 billion shillings only. So the difference means that it's mainly underpinned by the ambitious growth expectations in the coming year. Well, we know that last year was a bad year, quote unquote, as compared to pre-COVID levels. So, but we still don't have the data. But yet, here we are, Treasury, saying that in the current financial year, of course, the growth is at around 3.8% and is expected to jump to 6.3%. But yet we don't know how 2020 was in terms of putting a figure to it. So even in terms of the projections, perhaps it's be a bit overly ambitious, and that is feeding into this an near increase of 181 billion in terms of the ordinary revenue to be collected. So if it pans out, we don't, and more likely than not, will not end up at that 1.78 trillion being collected.
Yes.
It means that the difference, holding everything constant in terms of the spending, it means that now it will lead to a ballooning in the fiscal deficit. So that's just the reality that we are facing as a country.
And that's the reality. And just before I cross over to Ramogi this morning, let's look at that data again that we have for you this morning in terms of the actual numbers versus what we normally have. We're calling the actual versus the outturn, and you will see that from that data, you'll see that we have actually more negative than positives in exactly what normally tends out to happen by the end of that financial year. All right, Ramogi, to you now then, you're saying that we are hopeful, but how do we then run on a document that is not even I would say, fiscal based? We don't have the full numbers for 2020. Whatever we used was a projection. Is a crime outright. Why don't we have these numbers, Ramogi? Because they're the ones that Treasury has to sit with and then project on exactly how we're going to perform come 2021, 2022. Is this document, the way it is now for Ramogi, just hopeful, the way you put it? And can we run on hopeful, especially when we're coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic and we are still in it?
Wow. For a moment there, if I was Ukuru Yatani, I would have reacted interesting. I would have told you, but we are a people of faith. And faith does not disappoint. Or is it hope does not disappoint?
Yes.
But I don't hold brief for him. And of course, I am equally surprised by the lack of the numbers in terms of, fair enough, you have a fiscal policy approach that does not meet your projections.
Yes.
So that you have a projection of an extra projection of 181 billion and an extra ordinary revenue expected of 8 billion. But you are telling us that, look, we are going to get some 174 billion somewhere, or 173 billion somewhere by faith, or if you like, hopefully. And so it's very irresponsible, if I can put it that way. But then again, on the other hand, my biggest challenge is that some of the policies that is put in place in terms of revenue collection or the taxes might have a ripple effect in that they are going to inhibit growth further. For example, the idea of taxing boda. When you have boda, you have a very large number of young people who actually get this equipment and use it to provide transport to goods and people out of Nairobi especially.
Yes.
And this really makes the economy to move. It makes goods to move. It makes people to move. It creates a multiplier effect of sorts. Now, if you put a nip on that and you say we are going to tax this, what you're looking at is a possibility of a reduction in terms of a buying capacity of these young people. And when you reduce buying capacity, you are essentially reducing the movement of money and growth in the long run.
Yes.
And so it's not just the lack of numbers, it's also the lack of strategy in terms of this is going to affect growth in the 1 year that we are going to see it. And this is going to have a counter effect further than he expected.
Pretty much. At this time, in a point, let me introduce to the conversation Samuel Karanja, who's the CEO MSME Alliance of Kenya. Mr. Karanja, happy to have you around.
Thank you.
I mean, you've just come in at that point where the panel is crossing over to the priority points for expenditure for this government. Let's talk about smaller businesses. And now, the key point, pending bills, I mean, let's give it to them. It's a win, isn't it, somehow? Because now they've said that state agencies, counties and other ministries have been given up to June 30th, 2021 to clear all the pending bills, failure to which there is an introduction now, they'll be blacklisted. Is that a win for you, especially when talking about smaller businesses in the country?
Well, I don't want to be a pessimist.
Yes.
But I don't think it's a win. Because I think this is the second time that he has said that.
Yes.
And the government should have strategy.
Yes.
When you're talking about pending bills, where are they going to get the money from? When you look at the deficit that the government has, where are they going to raise the money from? So we are looking at a promise which we don't know how the government is going to foot the bill.
Yes.
So until we wait and see the pending bills which are being paid. And I remember, I think we were in this show some time back, and we said these are small people or small businesses who are selling stationaries, who are selling pens, who are selling paper, to the county governments. How do you expect a person who has given you about 500,000 worth of goods, and this person is an SME, and probably he has borrowed money from maybe a circle somewhere, or even family, or even he has gotten a supplier from China, the ripple effect part of it is even that person is not in business.
Yes.
So the actuals are, the reality on the ground is, let us see how they are going to pay that money. Because this is, I think, some of them have not been paid for about even 5 years.
Yes.
The issue that you have with the government is that you find that any regime that comes in, let's say, for example, the former regime of a certain county, they do not want to take liability of, the incoming doesn't want to take the liability of the former regime.
Yes.
And so it's like, I'm starting afresh. So if your governor, if the former governor didn't pay you, you ask him. And it's not, it's not about personality, it's supposed to be systems. If, for example, it's a build-up. This county, you are supplied these. You consume this amount of services from me. Pay me even if it's in the next regime.
Yes.
So we are waiting to see how it's going to be.
Pretty much. It's a wait and see. It's a good thing that everybody now is in the thick of this. Abraham, taxes. Case in point, the finance bill 2021, which Churchill has already analyzed and said, if they're going to get anything out of it, it's just 8.7 billion. Let's look at it then. Under that, there's some winners and losers as well. I mean, motorcycles now unassembled would attract a 10% duty. We're talking about betting excise duty, 20% on the overall stake amount. Leather and footwear products, 25%. The ones, furniture imported into the country, 35%. Those are the ones that really stand out at a time when the budget committee told the Treasury that the way to go about it is not to borrow, but come up with proper inventive ways to tax the economy more. What do you feel about the Finance Bill 2021? And I also want you to mention on that specific aspect that Ukur Yatani is seeking to have the powers to mitigate VAT without the approval of the National House.
Okay, fine. I think in any government system,
yes,
it's always good to maintain a maker and checker.
Yes.
Arrangement. So I think let it stay the way it is.
Yes.
I mean, don't give too much power to one person.
Yes.
So I think that is out of the way. But now, if you look at the taxes, I think Yatani was in a corner, and what he has done, given the corner he was in,
yes,
he has basically just taken back all the umbrellas he had given out. Look at now. Now we are even taxing because, like LPG, when you tax, when you introduce a VAT on an LPG, what is the effect of it? In a country where we are trying to be compliant with clean energy, with conservation, with the issue of the climate that is around the world.
Yes.
So that again goes against all those gains that we've done. Because what will people do? People will go back to their firewood. People will go to whatever they were doing before. That's number one. Number two, they've introduced a tax on the machinery that was coming in that they'd exempted to come and recycle plastics.
Yes.
That again has been taken away. So when you read some of those effects, is that those people, the people who wrote that budget were not in the same room with all the policymakers. Definitely. Because the guys who crafted this thing went through a lot of pain.
Yes.
To bring down the tax on this so that we could bring equipment to recycle out, because the plastics are choking us. But if you can get plants here that can actually use those plastics as raw materials, before long we'll have to be importing plastics. But now you're telling the guy, add 16%, he'll tell you what for? Let me look for something else. So then you're saying they introduce taxes to things like choppers. You know, those things, really, how many choppers do you buy in a year? So when I look at the sample of that thing, I think it's they did not tax their mind enough.
Yes.
Because the truth of the matter is, the problem sits with only one issue, and one big issue.
Yes.
One, the complexity of our tax regime. That's number one. Many people want to pay, but even me seated here, if today you ask me, are you compliant in tax? I will not answer you yes or no, because I do not know. I've tried my best, but I'm not sure. Why should I be in that position, as knowledgeable as I am? That's number one. Number two, the duplicity of those laws.
Yes.
You've paid here, then you're told this one, if you pay, you subtract it from this other one, and then you add it to this. I mean, you cannot operate laws that way. And thirdly, how can tax laws have more than one meaning?
Yes.
You'll find people going to court, and the law is interpreted as X.
Yes.
The following month, another set of people go to the same court and get another. So it means these laws are not as clear as they should be, because a tax law should be so specific that 5 only means 5, and it has no other meaning. So that is the problem.
Yes.
That's why you have, what you're dealing with are symptoms. But if we simplify it, I can assure you, Kenyans, the ordinary Kenyan, would have no problem paying. And that way would widen the tax bracket.
Yes.
And lower the tax rate. And that would, most of those problems would go away. But what we're trying to do now of taking back umbrellas that we had given out, we will not achieve much. But
yes.
The negative economic effect is even worse, because you will stunt all those growths. And remember, this budget was supposed to be a recovery budget, but it is not. Because all it has done is that it's trying to make sure that we just see another financial year.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly it, Churchill, because that's the question that I wanted to actually put to you this morning, even as we continue to look at that data that's going to give us the trend all the way up to where we are right now. That is the same thing. And I want to ask you the same question that Abraham is asking this morning. Ukuri Yatani called it a recovery budget. Okay, let's look at the numbers therefore. If you look at that, 1.27 is going into recurrent expenditure. I don't know whether that's recovery. You're going to tell us. 669B is the only one that is going into development expenditure. That's where we are. And if you look at that, 697.5 of that is going into interest and pensions. Good. Counties get 370 billion. And also civil servants also receive that 20.8 billion in pensions. Let's look at that recovery point. They have given us 23.1 billion as the one that is going to cushion the economy and businesses from the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Churchill, a recovery budget or not?
Hardly not a recovery budget. You just walked us through the statistics.
Yes.
Post-COVID economic stimulus package, paltry 23 billion out of a budget of 3.6 trillion. So that's a drop in the ocean. And then if you go into the specifics, you say that I think what is going to liquidity for the businesses is quite small against the demands that could be able to support the liquidity. So I'm not saying that it's a recovery budget,
yes.
as you did earlier on. Looking at the specifics, as you mentioned, and this is the past is catching up with us. Specifically, I don't know how the numbers dropped, funnily, to 697 billion in terms of the interest and pension payments, because the number that I worked just for the interest payments for domestic and local was coming to around 768 billion shillings already, which is more than the amount that is going to the development spending, and that's just interest payments. You have the debt redemptions, another 600 billion thereabout. So collectively, we have a regime whereby the public servicing of public debt is around 1.17 trillion, which is double the amount that is going to the development spending.
Yes.
And that is the issue that is coming in, that people go take debts or we accumulate debt so as to be able to finance the development spending. But right now here, we are now paying a double amount what we are getting, what we are budgeted for development, meaning that the right now the public debt is around 7.3 trillion. So the past, in terms of debt, high debt accumulation has now caught up with us, and now to the extent that we are service a huge, significant chunk of our budget is going towards debt servicing, and that's something that I don't know how sustainable the government will be able to get us out of this hole. I don't think it will be able to get us out of this hole, because if you just strip off even what has been allocated to the national government, this is the recurrent and the development spending. To be fair, as compared to what is the allocation in the current financial year, there's a decline getting into the next financial year. But what has now moved the budget to where it is at 3.6 trillion is this issue of public debt servicing, which I don't think it will be sorted out in the future. Pretty much.
All right. Ramogi, let's look at another area before we rush back to Samuel and talk about exactly this SME one scheme that has been allocated 2 billion on top of the 10 billion. We're going to talk about that shortly. But Ramogi, let's look at what is going to be Uhuru Kenyatta's bye-bye, if it is going to be, in terms of the Big Four agenda. Is the one who gave it to us when he took over. Now let's see exactly how it's going out. Manufacturing is being awarded 20.5 billion. I don't know what they say only on top of that. Food security, 60 billion. Universal health, 47.7 B. Affordable housing, 13.9 billion. There I might add just 13.9 billion. Ramogi, top four agenda, another 2021-2022 document. Is it something that we can look and then say, wow, that's really good?
Well, I really wish we could. To be fair, To be fair, in terms of capturing what we need within this phase of 5 years,
Yes.
because the Big Four agenda is in fact a midterm policy drawn from the Vision 2030. And in terms of capturing what the country needed at this time, they got it spot on in terms of the human end, which is the housing and health, and in terms of the production end, which is manufacturing and agribusiness.
Yes.
That was supposed to drive growth, as it were. Now, let's come to implementation. Of course, that's where the drama always begins, because first, agriculture, health, and housing are all devolved functions. But the administration, the Uhuru Kenyatta administration, has insisted on managing it from the national office, and so that then the counties are minimally engaged. And so what you have in the end is very little progress as regards agricultural investment, as regards food security, properly policies, as regards housing. I'm yet to see any housing project that has been properly flagged off that, look, we collected the housing levy, we saved some money from the national budget, and we have housing projects in Bangladesh, Mombasa, in Nakuru. You are yet to see that. And so, again, the big question usually remains implementation. But to also try to understand, I'm still wondering what they are doing with the money allocated to manufacturing, because the government does not manufacture.
Yes.
The government facilitates manufacturing.
Yes.
And so I would expect that there was a fund maybe that they have been contributing to for the last 4 years, and
Yes.
now maybe the fund is around 100 billion, so that if I wanted to manufacture, I'm a creative Kenyan, I want to manufacture some of these things used for health. So I can go to this fund and say, look, I have an awesome idea and I want this money. So that then you are saying, well, we have this money and it's promoting manufacturing. You don't see that. I am not sure what this 40 billion is going to do in the manufacturing space. Because the other thing would be to create cottage industries, or to create these, manufacturing areas or zones. Yes. Where someone can just come and plug and play. You have a nice road, you have warehousing facilities, the license is easy to access. So it's a plug and play area. We don't have that as yet. I have seen money being set aside for Dongo Kundu in Mombasa. This is like the 3rd year. Have we seen any progress as regards the establishment of the Dongo Kundu Free Economic Zone? No. So some of these things I think are just to make us feel like money is coming into our zone. Something is happening in Dongo Kundu, but nothing is happening in Dongo Kundu. Nothing is happening in manufacturing. Nothing is happening in agribusiness that you can take home and say, look, this has been done. But let me finish by, of course, pledging my loyalty and saying I'm very happy for the port in Kisumu, and we would like to see more like that.
Samuel, on that note, yes. Let's therefore talk about it. I mean, look, they've said there is the 2 billion that they've added to the 10 billion that they gave us in the last financial year. So he actually said, so he's just adding on it. He didn't say he's awarding it afresh this year. Is adding on it this year. So we don't know which value we're going to start on as from this year, and we don't know the adoption of this credit guarantee scheme. Can you talk to us about the effectiveness of this credit guarantee scheme? Do businesses actually go for it?
You see, I want to quote somebody who said that this budget is guesswork.
Yes.
Because when you look at the credit scheme, who are you giving it to? Secondly, what is your strategy? Because this budget lacks strategy. You are just throwing figures here and there. So you're not giving people direct, path to follow. Let me give an example. I represent Mama Mboga as MSME Alliance of Kenya.
Yes.
So when you tell Mama Mboga about government scheme, what does she understand about that? Let's go to the basics. What does she understand about that?
Yes.
Let's go to a boda person. What does he understand about that? You see, the government is using what we call kizungu mingi. They are supposed to break down the strategies that they are supposed to bring to resuscitate the economy,
yes,
and to cushion the small medium entrepreneurs.
Yes.
You know, it's like confusing the SMEs, because when you use all that English, we don't understand that. What is supposed to be done? I remember they gave, I think, even an additional 3 billion shillings to small medium entrepreneurs. Dissemination of that currency or that money to the SME, what was the strategy? There was no strategy. They actually named some banks where you can go and get that money. When you go to the bank tells you they don't have any communication from the government. So who is fooling who? You know, it's important for the government to be able to be truthful to its people.
Yes.
The electorate, and there's small medium entrepreneurs, and I dare say this: small medium entrepreneurs are the backbone of this economy. Go do whatever you want to do. I think Ramogi has said something very profound. He has talked about special economic zones. This special economic zone is a plug and play. Ideally, every county is supposed to have special economic zones. Every county, because what was the essence of devolution? The essence of devolution was to bring money to the common mwananchi on the ground. So when you go to any county, go to the 47 counties, what are they producing? If, for example, you go to Kiambu, what are they producing? Go to Meru, what are they producing? We are supposed to have special economic zones whereby it has already, it's an environment of plug and play. You have incentives in terms of taxes, you have warehouses. When a person comes in there and they set a small manufacturing plant, they can be able to produce from that place, and we can be able now to sell products from whichever county, regionally, even the East African region. But what are we talking about when you say about government guarantees? What is that? Break it down. What we need is money. Money that has been disseminated from the central government using proper structures and systems to reach to the SME, whereby we can borrow money and pay up that money. And let me say this, the former regime which was there, the Kibaki regime, I don't know which magic that they used, because we did a lot of business. We could go, you remember the banks were hawking loans on the streets. You could go there and get a loan, and what we need as small medium entrepreneurs is facilitation, nothing more. So don't tell us about bank guarantees. How many people know bank guarantees? Probably myself and my brother here, because we are in a different pedestal. But go down to the common mwananchi, the person there who is Mama Mboga, the mama who is selling omena in Kisumu. These are the people who drive the economy, because they empty the shelves as they trade. You know, they make 500 shillings, and the 500 shillings is what they are going to go and empty the shelves with. So they make the money circulate, the currency circulate. But when you talk about the big boys, they go and they do shopping for 6 months. They fuel, they do a tank, they fuel full tank. They rarely work. We use boda, we use trolley people, we use the supermarkets. We are the people who are making the economy grow. And that is where now you're supposed, as a government, to concentrate on. Have incentives which are very realistic, and make sure that the money, and even have checks and balances. The KPIs, so you are giving to 10 billion, is an addition of 2 billion. What did the 10 billion do to add the 2 billion?
We should have been told on
what
exactly
informed
what it is,
what informed the addition of the 2 billion. What did the 10 billion do, so that it can inform why they should add the 2 billion? They have nothing. That's guesswork.
Pretty much.
Now, just
as you add on top of that, Abraham, I'm just going to give you a minute, because that's the only time that we've been allocated for now. Just add on top of that, and Abraham, just attach this answer to that. The way out for this government was, and that was actually a proposal from the Budget Parliamentary Committee, they said, number one, get into a lot of public partnerships, fight corruption within the government, and reduce on borrowing. Attach it to that as we clear this conversation.
I think borrowing is not going to go away anytime soon. Public-private partnerships, they have to amend the law. Because it is very onerous for you, for you to get your approvals. It's a very long and onerous process. In fact, this express highway we are seeing now is the first one since that act was put in place. Now, going back to what my brother is saying, and it's very dear to me, that if you look at the MSME space, you know, even the government does not even know where half of them are, because they are below radar, because it works for them to be below radar. Then what did they do? They came up with the bill. I don't know if it has come through the MSME authority. Where they are saying that the SMEs need to come and register. Why would I register with you? I'm just doing just fine where I am. You see, so it is all wrong. It has to be, that law has to be customer centric. It has to be about the MSME. And then lastly, what we are seeing, these chunks, this is wholesale chunks, 400 million, 20 million. But what is how do we retail this through the last mile? And that's what he's saying.
Yes.
There's a problem. How do we chunk out? That 11B, how was it chunked out?
Yes.
The 11B is there. We are not disputing it was there, 10B. How was it chunked out?
Yes.
Did it get there? Did it have the impact? Did everybody get there 20 and 30 and 40? And what criteria was used? Then, and that would inform whether we need 2, we need 4, we need 6, or we need 8, or we don't need any more money. The credit guarantee scheme is a good scheme, but then again, it's a very complex structure. So yes, at the top level, when they're engaging with the bank, yes, they need to lay a credit guarantee
Yes.
to de-risk the MSME. Then now, the bank, they have to come up with very finite guidelines, very simple. That if you want, kama unafanya kazi ya mamboga, you just come with your M-Pesa statement or this,
Yes.
and you get your money.
Yes.
Three or 4 steps.
Yes.
Something very simple.
Yeah.
And even to the extent where, since we have a lot of integration, you can even do it on USSD. You know, because I'm telling you, that last mile
Yes.
is the problem.
Is the problem,
Yeah,
isn't
because Mama Boga, they've all had. We have been given 2B.
Yes.
But then how? Do I go to Treasury? How does it get to me? That is the problem.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty much. Churchill, 15 seconds, please, because we are winding up this morning, Churchill. If you may, reduce that wage bill, get into PPEs and fight corruption within the government. That maybe could have seen us get into a lesser figure as opposed to this 3 trillion that we have. Have they managed it, or is that a possibility, especially when you look at this document?
Well, let me just now flip the hopeful side from the awful side that Ramogi has really pitched in this show.
Yes.
So on the hopeful side, we're looking at this issue to do with, we are within the IMF program. And one of the things that have been put in the forefront that even the CS mentioned yesterday is this issue to do with public procurement. There's a bill that is supposed to at least unlock that issue. So hopeful, at least we'll see better users of our monies, less corruption. So that's the hopeful side that I'm looking at.
And that's the hopeful side. Ramogi cut this conversation this morning, therefore. Reduce that wage bill, which they haven't, fight corruption and get into a lot of public-private partnerships. That's how you start to lessen your budget. Is there any hope? Let me use that one as well.
I think the only hope that I have is that the IMF is going to make them do it. Because when the IMF comes on board, them and the World Bank, they come with conditions.
Yes.
They tell you, all right, we're going to bail you out, but you have to put your house in order. And there are people who might lose their jobs. And there are ghost workers who will lose their jobs, hopefully. So that is doable. The other thing also that I think is also doable, maybe after the term of this presidency, and that is maybe September, October, January of 2023, is the public-private partnerships. Because to be honest, I don't see any significant partnerships between now and August next year. People will be busy campaigning and looking for votes, whether it's for the referendum, which I doubt, or it's for just the presidential elections. And so I don't see anything significant. I think somewhere in May, while we are sleeping or hoping to sleep through it, a parastatal or 2 may be signed out to a private investor. But there is no significant public-private partnership that I'm looking at in the interim. So in terms of managing the resources, look, let's just hope that everything goes on until August next year. And like I said, I'm still loyal. Thank you very much.
This morning, we were joined by Samuel Karenja, the CEO, MSME Alliance of Kenya, with Vyambu Ramogi, economic analyst and CEO, Elema Capital, Abraham Muthogo, the CEO, Miradi Capital, and Chachi Logutu, head of research, Genghis Capital. These gentlemen are saying, yes, let's get into it, but there are questions. So the same thing for you. How do you align yourself, therefore, in the 2021-2022 budget? Is that a play for you to bite, or have you been bitten and have you just landed now, or you knew all the way back in February? Guess what? If you do not publicly participate, then it's too late for you because it's already been accepted. My name is Simbalaja Charles Kiage, 20146. Let the conversation continue on your SMS line at Metropol TVKE across all your social media platforms. Hopefully, it's a good morning for you.